This video is all about my favorite thing, fingering. I'm mainly going to be speaking about masturbation techniques and fingering your own pussy, but obviously everything that I'm saying will also be transferable to fingering someone else. So keep watching and let's talk about fingering. Being fingered by someone has always been one of my favourite sex things, and I think it's quite an underrated sex act as well. I think we spoke a lot about fingering at school. It was like, oh, did you hear that she got fingered and all that kind of crap. And then it kind of faded into obscurity a little bit, I think, in my early 20s. But I always really love fingering, and it's consistently the easiest way for someone else to get me off. But for a long time in my masturbation journey, habits, schedule, I don't know, for a long time when I was masturbating, I would always reach for toys because I own a sex toy shop. I have hundreds of toys, and quite frankly, sometimes I'm a little bit lazy and toys feel great. So I'll often just reach for a toy and habitually have a wank, have an orgasm and get on with my day. Recently, I've started rediscovering fingering myself, and I've really been enjoying just luxuriating in a little bit more of a slow wank, and going acoustic has a lot of benefits. And I just find that when I'm fingering myself more, I also find it easier to have orgasms during partnered sex, just because I'm used to kind of taking my time a little bit more. So yeah, I thought it'd be a great time to do a video all about fingering. So we'll cover some things that you need to know and different techniques for fingering a vulva. And without further ado, let's get into it. First things first, let's go into some initial tips for getting the most out of fingering. So I think it's super important to not touch your vulva until you're already turned on. So, you know, when you're having sex with a partner and you've been flirting, you've been teasing, you've been caressing and kissing, and by the time they get to your pussy, you're already turned on. You're perhaps wet, you're engorged, you're sensitive, and you're wanting it. I think when you do the same to yourself, you get a lot more out of fingering. And especially if you're used to using toys as well. The thing with toys is they're amazing, but you don't really have to have engorged clit or an aroused body to use a toy, because it kind of does that work for you straight away. Whereas with fingering and touching, it can take a little bit longer, and I know that can lead to frustration if you're used to just putting a toy on straight away. So spend some time either thinking about things that turn you on, you know, fantasizing, letting your mind wander, putting on some porn, listening to some audio erotica or reading some erotica, and caress your body. Yeah, caress your body. Touch your arms, your legs, your chest, and really build up to those erogenous zones, and don't touch your pussy until you are desperate for it. Tip number 2, wetter is better. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes our body's arousal response doesn't match up to the level of arousal that we feel, by which I mean, if you have a penis, sometimes you're turned on and you can't get hard, and if you have a vulva, sometimes you're turned on but things don't get wet. And that is perfectly normal, perfectly natural. It's called arousal non-concordance. You can read loads of interesting things about that in Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are. But don't despair, because there's this wonderful little thing, I think you've probably heard of it, called lube. I love lube. I use lube all the time. I think when you're masturbating with your hands, particularly at the beginning, it's a really great tool to just help everything feel really slick and wet and smooth and free from friction straight away. So all those little touches and caresses that you start to do feel amazing from the get-go. At the moment, these are my 2 favorite lubes. This is Lovis and this is Rome, and they're both 2 wonderful body safe water-based lubes. I will link to them below. Okay, so now we're ready to start touching our vulva. So when you start to explore, go slow first of all, and rather than going straight for the clit, I would spend some time just exploring all the different parts of your vulva. Maybe run your finger from the bottom all the way to the top where the lips meet, and just to explore feeling how the inner and the outer labia feel when you touch them. How does it feel when you run your finger across the vaginal opening? How does it feel when you circle around your clit without touching it? Just start exploring and being playful and teasing yourself. I really like to cup my hand around my vulva as well and kind of like grind it gently across the whole thing, just to get the blood kind of rushing to that area and to start to just take notice of which specific bits feel really good. This is probably a good time to tell you that I have filmed an explicit version of this tutorial, which you can find on my OnlyFans, and I am demonstrating all of these hand techniques that I'm about to go into on myself, on my own pussy. So if you're a visual learner, head over there and you can watch me doing all of this stuff for real. In the name of education, of course. So when you're ready to actually start touching your clit, take some lube or dip your fingers just inside your vagina, get them nice and wet. Either of those options, chef's kiss, beautiful. And slowly drag your fingers up to your clit. At this point, I usually start with some broad strokes along the entire length, just teasing over the clitoris. And when I can feel that my clitoris is starting to get engorged with blood and erect, because yes, clitorises get erect, just like penises do when blood flows to the area. And when I can feel that that's starting to happen, I start doing some strokes which I know work for my body. So let's talk about all those different types of strokes now. First of all, you can experiment with the number of fingers that you're using. Maybe you like the specific stimulation of just one finger. Maybe you like a slightly more broad stimulation of 2, 3, 4, maybe even the palm of your hand or your knuckles. So the next thing that you can play with is the direction of the stimulation. So perhaps you like clockwise, anti-clockwise, perhaps you like up and down, or even tapping. Did you know that most people have a clitoris that is more sensitive on either the right or the left hand side? Yep, we have lefties and righties in our pants, who knew? So this is a really useful piece of information to know about yourself, to know if you're more sensitive on either side, because when you know that information, not only can you use it yourself, but you can communicate that to your sexual partners as well, so that if they're having trouble giving you pleasure, you have some really clear direction that you can give them. You know, hey babe, I love what you're doing, but if you could go anti-clockwise and upwards and really focus on the left side of my clit, that will just get me off so much quicker. Thanks. The next thing that you can play with is the clitoral hood. So everyone who has a vulva has a clitoral hood. Some people have clitoral hoods which are permanently retracted so that the glans or the head of the clitoris is exposed all of the time. And by the glans or the head, I just mean the bit of the clit that's outside the body, because as you might or might not know, there are about 3 or 4 inches of the clitoral structure also located within the vagina, which we're often stimulating indirectly through different kinds of stimulation. But obviously right now we're just talking about the head, which is poking outside of your body. As well as retracted hoods, you can have a hooded clit. So this is where the fold of skin is permanently covering the clitoris. Some people might find that when they're turned on, their hood naturally retracts and exposes the head of the clitoris. Some people might find that it never does that and it's always hooded. All of these things are perfectly normal. Everybody's body is different, and that is what is so beautiful about vulvas and about the human body. So the way that we can use this in fingering is by figuring out what gives us the most pleasure. Is it going, say that this is the clit, is it going just around the clit and not touching it directly? Is it going over the hood? Is it using another hand to almost pull the hood back and then stimulating it? Or is it even using the hood as a kind of like masturbation sleeve and pulling it forwards and backwards over the clit? Basically, there's loads that we can do with that, and understanding that is just another key thing in understanding your body and how to get the most pleasure out of it. And if you're like me, you might actually find that you enjoy different types of direct or indirect clitoral stimulation, depending on how turned on you are and how much stimulation you've already received. So at the beginning of having sex or fingering, I would generally prefer the hood to stay where it is. And then as I get more and more sensitive, I might be ready to pull it back and receive some more kind of direct stimulation. This video is mainly about external clitoral stimulation, but I would be remiss not to mention all the pleasure that can be had by also playing with your vaginal opening and your G-spot area, either on its own or in conjunction with clitoral stimulation. So just around the vaginal opening and the labia and that kind of area, there are loads of nerve endings. It's really sensitive and there's big pleasure potential to be had there. And even around the urethral opening as well, like all around that area, very sensitive. So what I really like personally is when I am fingering my clit, I will use the other hand and I will just kind of rest my fingertips almost like at the opening, and maybe I'll kind of like drum a little bit like that, or maybe I'll just like stroke, or maybe I'll just apply some pressure and just have it there. And I just find that extra stimulation is really exciting and it feels really good. And it also does mean that if I orgasm later on, that I can kind of feel the contractions of my pussy whilst my fingers are there, and I really like that. I don't know why, I just really like that. If you have longer arms than I do, then you can also put your fingers inside yourself and stimulate your G-spot area, either again just through like applying some pressure or through that come hither motion that we've probably all heard about. It does take some multitasking to be able to do both at once, but I have faith in you. I think you can do it. When you've found the kind of stimulation that works, you can begin to experiment with slower, faster, harder, softer, so the speed and the pressure, and find the combination that works for you. You'll often find that what's working after you've been fingering yourself for a while is probably quite different to the feelings that felt good at the beginning. So as that arousal and that sensation builds, different kind of speeds and pressures will probably feel good. Once you find something that works, and if you feel the pleasure starting to build, then keep on doing that. I know it can feel quite overwhelming, especially if you haven't orgasmed before or you're not used to orgasming with your hands and you start to feel that. It can feel quite overwhelming. So kind of just go with the flow and follow it and see where it goes. The big O. So I am a big advocate for decentering the orgasm from any kind of sex. I don't think orgasm should be your goal. I think pleasure should be your goal. As much pleasure as possible and being in the moment and having a nice time. But orgasms are great as well. Now, don't get frustrated if you can't orgasm the first time. And I mean this, practice makes perfect. And the first few times that you do this, it can be overwhelming, or your hand might get a little bit tired, or you just might be a little bit overwhelmed by all the different things that you've been trying. So once you start to figure out which sensations you like, come back in a few days or the next day or a few hours and try again and just have fun with it. Like, as I said before, the main aim of all of this is to feel as much pleasure as possible. Hopefully you found this video very useful and interesting and you loved it, and you're gonna like it right now and you're gonna subscribe to my YouTube channel for more sex ed content in the future. And if you want to see more, if you want to see all of this being demonstrated on myself, I would love to have you come and join me over on my OnlyFans. You can subscribe, I'll leave a link below, and we can have a chat. We can have a chat about fingering over there. I love to chat to my subscribers. So yeah, I will see you next time. Love you all. Happy fingering. Goodbye.